Discussion. So, comparison of two tests showed a visual correlation between the tests, as you can see in figure 8. A t-test was run on the two sets of data, from the tests to establish whether there was a correlation between the tests. This t-test resulted in a p-value of 0.023, where a significance level of p is less than 0.05, showing that there was therefore a significant relationship between the two. An R value of 0.62 was also established from the tests, showing that there was a strong correlation. This would enable the implication that one test would likely have the same result as the other in future testing. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that the tests are valid or reliable. These tests are not gold standard and therefore can't yet be compared to the gold standard gas analysis. Therefore, comparison of the two tests to the gold standard test was also done to establish if there was any correlation. Due to the significant relationship between the multi-stage fitness test and the Queen's College STEP test, only one of the two, the multi-stage fitness test, was paired in a t-test against the Douglas bag analysis. The results of this showed a p-value of 0.846 and an R value of minus 0.06. Hence, this suggests that there is no significant relationship between the multi-stage fitness test results and the Douglas bag gas analysis results. Henceforth, considering gas analysis is the gold standard and considered to be most reliable according to sources of literature previously mentioned, it would be suggested that these methods of testing, so the multi-stage fitness test and the Queen's College STEP test, are not reliable. However, contradictory to this, literature suggests that there is a relationship between the gold standard and the field test of multi-stage fitness test. So, a study by Kasim in 2011 looks at field tests in comparison to the gold standard. Kasim states the main findings of this study were analysing the hypothesis. The researcher analysed the data using the person's product moment correlation on the hypothesis. From the hypothesis, the results show there is a significant correlation between 20-metre multi-stage shuttle run and laboratory test on estimating the VO2 max among elite netballers. So this literature looks at netball players and looks at a measurement of VO2 max using the lab method, which was the gas analysis, in comparison to the field test, which was the multi-stage fitness test. This study found that there was a correlation, which contradicts my findings that there wasn't a relationship between the multi-stage fitness test and the gold standard Douglas bags. It could be implied from this research that the multi-stage fitness test is a reliable test, as Kasim found it to have a strong correlation with the gold standard gas analysis lab method. However, obviously, my research found differently. In other literature, Anstrad in 2011 looked at the validity and reliability of the multi-stage fitness test in adults. Anstad states the 20-metre seems to be a reliable test, although validity is less certain, as relatively high variability was observed between measured and estimated VO2 max from the 20 metres multi-stage fitness test. This shows that in this study, the multi-stage fitness test was also found to be reliable. However, there was some uncertainty towards the validity of the test. Literature studying the reliability of the Queen's College STEP test found the test to be unreliable. A study by Chatterjee in 2005 states the difference between the mean VO2 max values directly measured and indirectly predicted was statistically significant. The limit of agreement analysis revealed poor confidence level for application of current method of Queen's College STEP test in the studied population. So what that literature is saying is that there was a significant difference between the field test of the Queen's College Step test in comparison to the lab methods of the gas analysis, which would imply that the Queen's College Step test is not reliable or valid, as it doesn't have similar results. It doesn't produce similar results to the gold standard test, which is known to be reliable and accurate. So, whilst other literature found that the multi-stage fitness test had a correlation with the gas analysis, obviously my research found it not to be closely related to the gas analysis. And similarly, literature found that the Queen's College Step test was not reliable, and I also found it to be unreliable when compared to the gold standard Douglas bag testing. This can be seen visually in Figure 9. So if you look at Figure 9 in comparison to Figure 8, Figure 8 looks at the group data for the two VO2 max tests, the multi-stage fitness test and the Queen's College Step test. You can see even just visually that there is a clear correlation there. And obviously I've also mentioned that the p-value and r-value showed that there was a strong correlation that was statistically significant as well, showing that there was a relationship there between those two. And that would imply that those two tests are reliable in terms of each other. If you were to test using the Queen's College Step test, you could presume that you'd get a similar result for the multi-stage fitness test, and vice versa. However, when you compare it to the gold standard gas analysis using Douglas bags in Figure 9, you can see that the correlation is practically non-existent for the two tests in compared to the gas analysis. There is visually, at least, no correlation there to the gas analysis, and then obviously the t-test showed that there was no statistically significant relationship either. So it could be implied that those two tests, the Queen's College Step test and the multi-stage fitness test, aren't reliable or valid, and that the gas analysis should be used if you want accurate results, whereas the Queen's College Step test and multi-stage fitness test may be able to kind of link to each other and used to predict what you'd achieve in the other test. However, it can't be used to compare to the gas analysis based off of my results anyway. This is likely just due to the accuracy and the procedures in general for the gas analysis. Obviously, I mentioned previously how the procedures make the test more reliable because it's a direct measurement that puts you working maximally, and there's specific criteria to meet for that test as well. So there's going to be obvious differences in accuracy because of that direct measurement that occurs in gas analysis, whereas the Queen's College Step test and multi-stage fitness test are indirect measurements where estimation is involved. Therefore, there's going to be that initial lack of reliability and accuracy anyway, due to those differences in protocols and differences in procedure. But also, you need to account for, when you're testing for VO2 max, whether the test is actually accessible. So, for example, for the multi-stage fitness test, one advantage of the test is that large groups can perform this test all at once. And that's the same for the Queen's College Step test as well. This is obviously an advantage as it allows people to obtain whole team data. So if you wanted to analyse a whole team, and in turn it reduces the amount of time that has to be spent on testing the athletes as well, as they don't have to do multiple tests after the other, like in terms of individuals. So one individual goes and then another. Everyone can do it at once, makes it more time efficient, and enables you to get whole team data quite quickly. And the test is also completed at a minimal cost. So both the Queen's College Step test and the multi-stage fitness test very cheap, therefore it's probably the most suitable for things like colleges and schools. And this is because the bleep test, the multi-stage fitness test, the recording for it can be found online for free. You only really need to measure and mark the 20 meters. Queen's College step test might be a bit more expensive because you have to buy the actual steps to make sure that it's the right height. Unless you have a step available that is the right height, in which case it would be very affordable. The multi-stage fitness test also, it puts you at maximum effort, unlike the Queen's College step test. So in that sense, it's similar to the gas analysis, but there could be issues with reliability because it's dependent on when the individual decides to drop out. There's no criteria to meet like the gas analysis, where the gas analysis determines when you're working maximally based off of criteria, and the multi-stage fitness test doesn't do that. It's just based on when the participant wants to drop out. So there could be issues in terms of how much effort and motivation the individual has. For example, it can be seen on the general trend of multi-stage fitness test that people dropped out on like specific levels. So when it hit 5.0, when they hit level 5, they dropped out, as opposed to 5.1. Or people dropped out when their friends dropped out. So yeah, there could be issues in terms of motivation and how motivated they are to push themselves to their limit. So that is an issue for the multi-stage fitness test. But the Queen's College step test doesn't really have that issue because you're working sub-maximally, so it's only 3 minutes, and it's very unlikely that anyone would drop out prematurely to those 3 minutes. Disadvantages of the tests. So yeah, that motivation level can influence the score. Environmental conditions can also affect the results sometimes. So the test is sometimes conducted outside, especially the multi-stage fitness test, and that's to increase ecological validity for some sports. This could mean that there's an effect on the test scores, because if some people test outside and some people test inside, the environment can have an effect, and then it can be harder to compare to normative data. Also, the multi-stage fitness test is a maximal test which requires a reasonable level of fitness. Therefore, it's not recommended for people with health problems, injuries, or low fitness levels either. But validity could be high for the multi-stage fitness test. If it's, for example, a footballer, they play outside. If the multi-stage fitness test was to be carried out on a football pitch, that would be very valid for them because it replicates the environment that they perform in. Reliability of the multi-stage fitness test would depend on how strictly the test is run, and that's the same for the Queen's College step test. It's how strict they are on making sure that participants meet the beeps or step up on the beeps. So yeah, it's just how strict they are, and because that strictness can affect the scores. For example, someone could do an extra shuttle in the multi-stage fitness test because their assessor is more lenient. And the amount of practice is also important for reliability as well. Participants should be familiarised with the test, really, to ensure that reliability is high. In general, though, although reliability and validity of the Queen's College step test and multi-stage fitness test is lower than that of the Douglas-Bag gas analysis, it's perhaps more accessible to the general population because VO2 max tests for the Douglas bags, they're usually done in labs using expensive equipment and using sports scientists. That's generally not very accessible to the general population. It's a maximal test as well, which is more difficult for those with health issues or the elderly. So the Queen's College step test and multi-stage fitness test is a cheaper, more accessible option to the general population, perhaps used more for health reasons, whereas the Douglas bags gold standard would be used more for sport analysis, I suppose, and performance.